human is.
There's a problem in the Muslim community.
And then they have to stop me and every Muslim in the entire airport?
Is it fair or is it unfair?
In general, the system is just not fair.
You got me there.
My name is Michael Sandel. I teach political philosophy at Harvard University. For me, philosophy is not just an academic subject. It doesn't just reside in the heavens beyond the world. It belongs in the city where citizens gather. Is discrimination always unjust? How should we deal with inequalities of income and wealth? Should national borders matter?
We are going to build a great border wall.
These are dangerous times for democracy. We're here in Greece at the sanctuary of Amphiaraos. Not far from here, democracy was born, and so was Western philosophy. We've gathered a group of young people from around the world, and in the spirit of Socrates, we're going to engage in some lively debates about the big questions facing our societies.
You and I, we don't have the same chances when we are born.
Can we take care of everybody?
Yeah, you can. You should.
We need to find a way to reason together about hard moral questions. And above all, we need to ask ourselves, what is the right thing to do? Would you allow a surgical robot to perform surgery on you? Would you use a marriage prediction app to help you choose your lifelong mate? At an age when science fiction seems to be coming true with new developments in artificial intelligence, we need to ask some big questions. Can machines outthink us? Or are there certain human judgments that only we can make? Smart machines, robots, artificial intelligence. Aristotle actually anticipated the possibility. He speculated that if the shuttle could weave of itself, then humankind would be released from drudge work. He didn't think that was possible, certainly not in his time, and he wound up defending slavery, slaves to do the drudge work, since machines couldn't. Well, today, a wide range of jobs that we take for granted as being performed by human beings increasingly can be performed by smart machines, by algorithmic-driven robots. So I'd like to begin by asking you, how many here think that sooner or later a robot will be able to do your job as well as you? How many think so? Let's start with those handful who think a robot eventually will be able to do your job as well as you. Anna?
I actually think that robots will be able to do most jobs, to be honest.
But what about your job?
Well, my job, I'm a science journalist, and first I thought, no, that's going to be hard. But now I think, no, you can have like all the information that's ever been written and do my job better than I do.
Because a kind of super Google will be able to gather all the science information on which you report?
Exactly, yeah.
And Philip, you think a robot can do your job?
Well, if computers can be so smart, why wouldn't they be able to do my job?
Which is?
Writing books.
Writing books? A robot could write a book?
Eventually, I think it should be possible.
And your books are about?
Human life and emotions, so you could say...
You think a robot could do that?
Well, I don't know the approach, but let's presume that a robot can load the entire library of all the books in the world, look for occurrences in there, algorithms, whatever, and come up with at least some semblance of a feasible novel, if it's better or worse than other novels.
Could even write a novel?
I would think there's structure and recurring themes.
Maybe better than some novels, I think.
Yes, maybe better than some. I'm going to hope, just to save my own ego, that there's a human component that...
All right, who else has a job you think? Derek, you think a robot could do your job?
Yeah, I'm a designer, and my job is basically to guide human behavior. When you're interacting with a piece of software or a website, you have a goal, an objective. You want to find some information. You want to order something to eat. With machines, we already do this in terms of analytics. We watch what everybody does on a website, and then we, as designers, we take that information and try and improve it to the point where you can get to point A to point B.
Emma, you raise your hand.
Yeah. Well,
you think so?
I'm a doctor, and I think that if I think of what I learned in studying medicine, then I gathered all this information. Then I got a lot of interaction or exposure to cases, people that were sick. And based on that, I had a lot of pattern recognition in my head. And now, by using other things like MRI scans as an aid and colleagues to, then I can come to a diagnosis. And I think that whole process is not very different from what computers can do. And they can even store much larger amounts of data and knowledge than I can.
Rita?
Well, I think also as a teacher, there are parts of my job that have already become obsolete because my students are exposed to information. You know, I don't tell them anything new, really, nothing they couldn't Google. But I don't see my job as just delivering information, and that's why I didn't raise my hand, because I feel like as a teacher, I do so much more.
I want to go back to the doctor example. Right now, whom would you trust more to read your scan? If you had to choose a device, a smart machine, or Emma.
I'm a very bad radiologist.
or a human radiologist. How many would choose the human radiologist? And how many would choose the machine? So the majority would choose the machine. All right, let's up the ante. Now suppose that unfortunately the scan does discover something that requires surgery. How many would have the surgery performed by a very sophisticated robotic surgical device? And how many would not? How many would not want the device, but would want the surgery performed by a human doctor, even in 5 or 10 or 15 years? How did you vote?
Well, up until now, I haven't seen a device that can do it.
But in principle?
But in principle, of course, it's very logic that if it performs the task better with more accuracy, and like pilots, they also don't fly the whole trip, or it's very logical to, if it's better at performing that task, requiring the focus and all that. Why
autopilot. In an airplane, they often fly on autopilot.
But it can go wrong as well. I've been in an air crash, and they trusted an automatic pilot, and we crashed.
Really?
Yes. So
should
we trust that? Totally.
Well, they need to improve it.
Sorry?
They need to improve the device. But in principle, is there any reason why
there can be a defect somewhere? That's my feeling.
I can also make a mistake.
Also with humans.
But I think it's nicer to, if you're sick and you're going to the doctor, that sometimes it helps to talk to the doctor about what's going on. You can't talk to the robot, but he's not going to say anything back to you.
Well, not yet, maybe.
A lot of call centers, they use chatbots, and they learn from how you interact with them, and they learn to be more and more polite and in a very empathetic way. I think it's a gradual interaction. We learn to trust robots and to interact with them.
Marcus?
Yeah. For me, I think it's about that emotional element. I mean, like, as a first iteration or a first layer in terms of coming up with a diagnosis, I think I'd be comfortable with a robot, but I do want to be able to connect with a person so that they understand perhaps the gravity of a diagnosis, and that I can look a person in the eyes and they connect with me. And I think that having that human element is key for me.
My fear is that a robot doesn't have respect for human life. So when you give a robot a task, it will do just the task, and it will be programmed to do it as well as possible. But when something else happens, when there's a complication, or when maybe killing me solves the problem, like something stupid. Let's remove the entire liver, so the entire liver disease is gone. But I won't survive without the liver. That kind of thoughts a robot could have.
Nora?
It's one of the 3 laws of basic robotics. It can't harm a human being. So that's very, very basic.
What do you mean, Nora? Now you work in this area, in this field.
Yes.
But what do you mean by it's a basic law of robotics that a robot will not harm a human being? There are robotic soldiers. There are drones. Those are robots, aren't they?
It just basically comes from the idea that a robot can't harm a human being.
But wait, it's that one that I don't understand. Can't harm or shouldn't harm. They should never be programmed to harm.
They should never be programmed to harm.
So that's
really
a kind
against the whole
ethical code of conduct for robots.
Yes.
Ignatius.
I don't think robots can be programmed to have a sense of morality like humans can, a sense of justice like humans can. And I think you can't really program that. I think sometimes there's hard decisions that you have to make, and they're made with the spirit, and I don't think robots have a spiritual element at all.
Sergio?
Assume you have a relative that is in critical conditions and needs to be resuscitated, and it's cured by a robot. And the robot knows when to stop the resuscitation. And the robot, we're assuming the robot is efficient and it makes the right decision. Now, would it make a difference if instead a human doctor did not stop at that same point, maybe irrationally, went further, tried harder? Would that make a difference?
You mean that might be better? A better judgment?
Would it be a better judgment? Would you prefer that for a relative or for yourself?
I can imagine taking care of an elderly person for a couple of weeks, having operated on him, and being every day talking to him and saying, okay, he'll get better. And then at one day, maybe he gets into a critical situation because he swallows a cornflake in the wrong way and he chokes, and he's 90 years old or so. Based on all the statistics, probably the robot would say, for his quality of life, for everything, it's better to let him go now. Where I would probably in that situation get quite a bit emotionally involved and continue longer than rationally or statistically would be the best.
And Emma, your emotional reaction to try heroically to resuscitate this person, you think would be understandable in human terms, but actually a mistake that a more dispassionate robot might judge better.
I think that robots could play a huge role in helping us to show the long-term versus the short-term solutions.
But I want to make sure I understand the thrust of your reply to Sergio. You're saying that you might try heroically to save this person out of love or compassion.
That risk would be there.
And that might be the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And the robot...
On the long term, yes.
The robot might make that decision better?
Yeah.
I would be against allowing machines to make that kind of life or death decision, even if it's against the law. So even if somebody does something that goes against the law that everybody accepts and that is established, I would not allow a machine to do that.
Ik denk dat het wel belangrijk is dat we moeten opletten dat machines niet gaan leven voor ons en gaan denken voor ons. En dat we moeten bedenken van het is wel ons leven en het is wel onze wereld. En we kunnen misschien meer macht geven aan machines, maar het is ons leven. Wij moeten de controle daarover blijven hebben.
I actually enjoyed Rita's comparison between a robot being a teacher versus an educator, because of course you can do YouTube or have a robotic teacher show you how to do math or the way color composition works, but a large part of actually being an educator, even though they're called teachers, is they can answer your questions about anything, lead by some sort of example, give you an extremely complicated comparison of various cultures, personal experiences. They show you how to grow and become a greater person instead of merely giving you information or technique.
Let's test the idea that robots can't be programmed to make moral judgments. Take the driverless car. Now, the driverless car has to be programmed to anticipate certain tragic dilemmas. Suppose the car is driving down the street and suddenly 3 pedestrians appear in the crosswalk going against the light. And let's say it's a mother and father pushing a baby carriage. And so the car needs to swerve, but in that particular setting, the only place to swerve to avoid hitting and killing the 3 is into a concrete barrier that would kill the 1 passenger in the car. Now, suppose you are the programmer of this driverless car. You have to decide what is the ethical principle that you should program into the car's decision. How many would say that the car in that scenario should be programmed to swerve, even if it means crashing and killing the 1 passenger to save 3 lives? How many would say that is the right thing to do? The majority. How many would not? How many? So the rest of you would program this car to what? To kill the 3? Tiffany?
I guess I'm not thinking in terms of the number of people who would lose their lives, but in terms of both the traffic, obeying the traffic laws, and then the ultimate goal, I guess, of the car of getting the passenger to their ultimate destination.
Right. So a car is to get the rider to the destination, come what may.
While following the traffic laws.
So the traffic laws, these pedestrians were in the wrong. They were walking against a red light. So you would program the car, Tiffany, to smash into those 3 errant pedestrians?
Ultimately, I think they would be casualties of the accident.
Yeah, I agree with Tiffany. I don't see the moral problem in that, actually, because if you program the device to follow the traffic rules, so that means brake as hard as you can, and if that means that the persons who did not obey by traffic laws get hit, it's the judgment I would also make as a driver, I think.
It's a risk that the family is making when they decided they were going to cross the street.
You broke the law?
You took a risk, like Tiffany said. You're taking a risk. I'm in a vehicle that's programmed to minimize risk, but following the guidelines of traffic. So,
Rita?
The reason why I thought that I would prefer the robot killing the driver is because I think that's what I, as a driver, would probably end up doing.
You would swerve?
Yeah, I mean,
probably
panic. Probably, if there's an afterlife, thinking that was the wrong decision, looking back. But I think that would be a natural human reaction. So I wouldn't mind if the car was programmed like that.
I share the same opinion as you. It's like you're choosing to kill somebody, even though that somebody made a mistake. And that's, I think, a feeling that I can't live with.
You think that would be wrong?
So I would rather have the robot switch over and go into that concrete.
So you disagree with you?
Yes.
First of all, even the traffic laws tells you that if there is something unpredictable happening, don't switch lane. Don't just jump to the concrete and the pavement and run over whatever you don't see. It tells you just brake as hard as you can and try to stop. And that's for a reason, I think. It's because if you talk about decision making, you're not making a decision in that case. You're not able to comprehend what is happening. So you need to have the reflex, I think, that minimizes risk in general situations. And I think that's the one that minimizes
But morally, you're taking quite a hard line. You're saying if they're going against the red light, and if my brakes don't work or I can't stop fast enough, the right thing to do is to crash into them and kill those 3 rather than kill myself.
You're returning my words. The right thing to do is to brake as hard as you can to stop.
Yes.
If that results in...
But if that doesn't work...
Then the people who did not follow the traffic laws are the ones who...
by consequence.
Who have, what to blame for me.
Well, I guess the moral question is how do you program it? Because in all these scenarios, like, the car would be programmed to stop for a red light, so that would not happen. And I think you were sketching a scenario where, like as a person, you were taught by your driver teacher, what do you call that? That whenever there's an animal crossing the street, you should always just go through. But emotionally, we are not able to handle that most of the time. So I think by having the driverless car, we skip those emotions and it would actually make the road safer. So that's what it's programmed to do. But it's just impossible to put all the possible scenarios that could go wrong into the car, because that would make you have to make moral decisions while programming it, and you'd have to program it to kill people. And you're just like obeying her rules. Like you cannot program a car to make a choice of death about other people. You can just program it to do good.
To follow the rules.
To follow the rules of the traffic.
So you don't think it's possible to program machines to behave in an ethical way?
But I don't think so. I do think so. I just think that it's impossible to put all the scenarios in there that might pop up and make moral decisions about it and program it about it.
My opinion was that the programmed car should actually, at least if I were riding in it, swerve to avoid the pedestrians and hit the wall. Ultimately, if I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I watch my car just maybe tap the brakes but go right through a couple of people and the child in the baby stroller rolls up over the window, like, I am not going to be okay either. And even if it's just a numbers game, like, I'm one person, I have no idea who this family is or what that child might do in the future, and I am absolutely not running into them. So if I get to just relax wherever I drive, but that car might kill me to save others, you know, I'm more likely still to be hit by a bus or something anyways, so it's a risk I'm willing to take.
De eerste instantie wat bij mij opkwam was, ja, natuurlijk, dan geef ik liever mijn leven en dan help ik 3 anderen. Dat is het eerste wat bij me opkwam. Maar later, toen hoorde ik andere meningen over de feit dat zeg maar, je moet, ja, lastig. Ik vind het lastig.
Ik denk, als je weet hoe robots worden geprogrammeerd, hoe computers worden geprogrammeerd, dat je ook weet dat er heel veel tijd en moeite wordt gestoken in het voorkomen van fouten die het eventueel kan maken. En daar komt bij, en daarom is de morele discussie heel belangrijk, dat alles alle fouten die het kan maken, die hebben wij er zelf ingezet. Dus een robot zal altijd alleen maar doen waar jij hem zelf toe hebt opgedragen. Dus de vraag is volgens mij, kun je morele beslissingen nemen en kan je die inprogrammeren in een robot? Mag je eigenlijk je eigen moraal aan een robot meegeven? Volgens mij is dat een hele relevante discussie.
Let's consider a different kind of human judgment. On Netflix, they recommend movies that they expect you will like based on other movies that you've seen. They have an algorithm to try to figure this out. Now, suppose there were a sophisticated version of that algorithm that predicted not what movies you would like, but who, of all the people in the world, would be the best match for you as a lifelong partner. Call it a marriage prediction app. And it would take all the information about you and about all of the people in the world and would come up, let's say, with a short list of 3. Now, whose judgment would you trust more in deciding whom to marry? The marriage prediction app or your parents? If that were the choice, whose short list would you work from? How many would say the marriage prediction app? How many would go with that?
It's because you said parents. If you said somebody else...
All right, that's the alternative.
Best friend would have been another story.
All right, and how many would go with their parents' advice? Well, a handful of people would still go with their parents. Asha, you say you go with the app.
Yes,
why is
because
that?
he knows every character, perspective of yourself.
Yeah.
He knows you well
Yes.
as you are.
Yes.
So I think he can search for a better match than my parents, who will see me at home or when I'm visiting them. Even though they raised me up, there was a time that I left home and created my own life. There's a life at home and a life outside of home.
Yeah.
So I don't think they are totally capable of searching somebody who fits me in both situations.
But the app doesn't have that gut feeling. And I want to connect with a woman on a spiritual level. And the app can't feel that. So we
Your
can...
parents do?
Trust me, my mama. My mama! Trust me. My mama knows these type of things. She knows me from the inside out. So if I come home with a girl, she would notice in like 2 seconds. No, this is not good for you. And I feel like even if we have the data of all the people in the world, if we don't have the click and we can't connect, we could be a match. But if we don't connect, then we're not gonna make it.
You can find out later on. If we're talking about a setup, you know, so your parents are telling you, I know somebody for you. And they know you as you are and your moments and your bad behavior, good behavior, etc., etc., etc. It's only the matchmaking. So it doesn't mean you really need to have the decision to stay with each other. I truly believe that the program would find that perfect, perhaps perfect match.
Yeah, but
more perfect than my parents.
But people change through the years. So
yeah, but that's what the app does. He knows you're changing. He knows your parents don't. Yeah, perhaps you're a different person with your friends than with your parents. How would they know how you will be with your friends? How your behavior is, what you like, what you dislike, etc.
My mama raised me, and she knows my basic principles. So maybe I'm a mama's boy. So maybe I'm just a mama's boy, but I don't care. But the question is, will the app have the ability to see the change in people?
Sure, you can add. It will follow your Facebook, your email, your everything that you put out in the world.
But people go through life experiences that an app can't predict.
The way in which these algorithms are essentially built, that they make horrible matches because it plays into like modern narcissism, because it all works basically on I wonder who's enough like me for me to like them. But the matches that work are based on kind of implicit human truths that aren't based on an algorithm. So it can never be as good as somebody's actual kind of human knowledge of somebody else. There's a irreplaceable, or I hope irreplaceable, human element that a computer couldn't match.
Pretend we get to a point in which we have that. We have the perfect algorithm.
Well, if it's perfect, then yeah, that.
The question is, but I think the question is, and being a mama boy as well, I think the question is there any space for a mistake? Even in choosing a partner to marry, is there any space for imperfection? Because this thing works very well. It's not the algorithms that we have now. It finds the exact perfect match. But don't we want to leave something out of that perfection for something as big as marriage?
Well, I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship, but if you have a perfect match, then the mistakes start happening, right? So I mean, so there's plenty of room for mistakes if you have a good connection.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I am married, and I don't know if a perfect robot would have found exactly my wife. She would have landed top 3.
But I think if it helps you find, this is going to sound very clinical, but a list of potential partners that have a good match, it helps it because it takes away a lot of the clutter of finding somebody who you have a good connection with.
Is that actual clutter, or that's part of what we call love dating?
But the very action of having an app do that for you. The perfect girl, the perfect boy, or whoever would be rendered imperfect based on the fact that there wasn't that human element of, oh, I'm in a bar and my hands are clammy, and the kind of the fluttering human experience of actually falling in love. Yeah. If you have an app provide you a perfect match, it's imperfect because you don't have the dance of falling in love.
There are apps out there that already work, and where many people, don't have this hesitation of dating and having clammy hands, just like picking somebody up from the bar. Same thing, just that the date was set up by Parship or whatnot, and there are people who are getting married already through that,
What about the sexual part? How will the machine know if that's a click? I mean,
how will your parents know?
And that too can grow. That too will
No, but what I mean is there's got to be a personal connection, I guess, or some kind of thing, because the machine will never know. I mean,
well, we're presupposing that it does. So what they write about online dating now is that it actually doesn't matter as much if you like the same film. You need a physical connection, but we're presupposing, I think, that the app also connects you to people. But I think Sergio's question underlies, if you take away all the foraging and the searching, you take away a lot of human experience. because you miss all the mistakes and wrong dates and the wrong things. So I might have actually switched back
but
to...
But there's something Sergio said, I don't know whether this app would have my partner in that top 3. So it makes me doubting right now when I would go for that machine.
You're changing your mind.
I don't know. I'm really, because of his argument, because I'm thinking, I'm married. Would that machine pick this guy that I'm married to? I don't know. Vanwege zijn opmerking was ik helemaal in de war. Want ik weet niet, nee, dat wil ik niet. Want ik wil mijn man nog steeds als mijn man zien en mijn man hebben. Ik ben er zo tevreden mee. Ik ben zo gelukkig. Dus het feit dat de computer hem niet eruit zal pikken, dat maakt mij ongelukkig. Dus op een gegeven moment was ik een beetje aan het twijfelen van, ja, zou ik volledig voor die computer gaan of niet?
Ik heb wel een vriend en ik denk dat die had daar best wel uit kunnen komen. Want die is op papier best wel wat ik misschien vroeger zou omschrijven als mijn perfecte match. Maar ik denk dat het element van verrassing een hele grote rol speelt in het vinden van liefde.
I see many friends of mine who benefit greatly from dating sites because not because you're maybe ashamed or something. It's just it helps you find matches. It's just there are so many people in the world, and if you're working, you don't have enough time to make mistakes. So if you can limit the subsets of people you're going to be meeting, I think that's a help that's appreciated.
My experience finding love was actually this perfect combination of technology and non-technology. I met my girlfriend of 8 years on Craigslist, which is quite surprising. It's not really a dating site, it's more for finding unusual things. But the way that this happened was my roommate one morning just took a random picture of me as I was eating breakfast, and then he put me up in the personal sections, and randomly he came to me and said, "Hey, there are some responses, you should check these out." And that's how it all started. So it wasn't so much that I was looking for love and needed technology to facilitate it. It was this humorous, like, spontaneous thing that I would never have expected to happen in my life, and just brought me so much joy.
What's interesting in this discussion is that it begins as a speculation about how good the marriage prediction app will really be. But what's lying behind that speculative question, well, is a philosophical or even, I suppose, a moral, spiritual conviction about whether or not we would welcome the possibility of an app being that good. So in a way, while we're speculating about what this smart machine could do, we are really hearing different views about whether it would be a better way of living. And I hear a lot of skepticism about that. I hear in Sergio's challenge, in Alfie's invocation of implicit human truths that can't be programmed, really a slightly different claim, that we would somehow be lesser human beings. Our relationships would be impoverished if the algorithms were good enough to capture all of that messy human connection. Caroline.
Could we program the computers and make the algorithms so that they make mistakes? I would like it if it was like a Russian roulette, even with the car example, but all of them, so that, because I don't really believe in human decision making either. I think it goes from left to right. Sometimes, you not on every topic, but the things that we're talking about now, you don't really know how you're going to react or how you're going to feel. So if the algorithms have that built into them, that they are, sometimes they do this and sometimes they do that, it would make it more human, right? Because there's the element of mistake and
well, let me ask you a question.
And change of heart.
Let me ask you a question. You're a comedian. Do you think there could be a smart machine programmed to be a comedian?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
To tell jokes?
Yeah.
To make people laugh? Are there rules? When you make people laugh, when some jokes work and others don't, can that be captured in rules?
Yeah, but there's one thing that would be based on what we know now and what we have done now so far in comedy. So the only problem I have with that is how is it going to evolve? How are new things going to, because that's, I think, what a human does, evolution.
Exactly.
I don't know how a computer would create a new sense of humor. I think they would only base it on the sense of humor that we... So I think it will be a great comedian, but I don't think in the long run that there'll be new...
They'd be telling stale jokes.
Yeah, but even in music, they would, if you have a perfect pop artist now, that robot would base the art on what has been done before. So how is it gonna create something new?
Machines can't learn, you don't think?
They can learn, but I don't think they can evolve on their own.
Couldn't they learn based on the laughs they get?
They could, but could they create something new that will not create a laugh at first, but has to grow on people?
You're an artist as well as me. If you come on a stage and it's a whole different crowd, and they don't like your jokes, then you got your creativity to make another decision and change your set. The robot can't do that because he can't feel at that moment. He can't feel.
But he can.
If I put you in front of let's say a black crowd,
Yeah.
and you come there with white jokes, and it's not, and nobody laughs.
But no, but imagine that he can register that it's a different crowd, that he can hear based on the applause what he's doing wrong, and he can switch very quickly.
That's the point. But can he connect with the crowd?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
No.
You don't think so?
Maybe that's my ego, but a robot can't do my job.
Are you saying that you're sure that a smart comic robot couldn't do your job? Or are you saying that if one were invented that could, you would think this would impoverish not only comedy but the human experience?
Actually, both. He can't do the job. He can make jokes or he can write spoken word, but he can't create the magic. I don't believe
magic.
Also, as a comedian, I would say that it's not about whether the robot could write jokes. You could probably, I believe that you could get a computer to write jokes, just not good ones. But in the same way that you wouldn't want to see like an AI lion tamer. The fun of watching comedy isn't about the jokes that you're telling, it's about the fact that you could get bit by the lion and die, or you could bomb out in front of everybody and have a horrible gig. And it's the human element and the human interaction.
Art is always a reflection on human life. So I think the artist, you have to look the artist in the eye and know that he has experienced what he's joking about.
Now, the people here who are saying that robots could not do comedy, are you really saying that if one day robots could do comedy, something would be lost to our humanity?
Exactly. We would lose something very important, I think.
And what would we be losing? What would we be losing?
I think we would be losing the sense of search, the sense of something bigger, the sense of something unpredictable.
Let me take a slightly different example. See if you would regret. This would be a cause for regret. There are now attempts to create digital avatars. There are websites that enable you to upload everything you have online, your Facebook page, your email, your photos, all your communications, everything about you, to create a digital avatar, a kind of virtual immortality, so that when you die, you can specify that your loved ones, or whomever you want to include on the list, can engage in, well, a Skype-like conversation with the digital avatar of your lost parent or grandparent or spouse. How many like the idea? And how many don't? Now, of those of you who don't, why not? Why not, Tiffany?
You're removing the human experience of the negative emotions. So I lost my dad when I was really young, and I think that has shaped a lot of my life experiences and who I am today. To have that opportunity to take away the grief or have him here, or know that I have the availability to speak with him and have him be a part of my life, I think it takes away part of what has shaped who I am. And then when I think about the app, the matchmaking app, you're taking away what Anna, I think, is calling the magic, the heartbreak. these emotions that we just don't want to have. And then thinking about the comedian as well, with that scenario, the discomfort you feel when someone tells a joke that isn't funny. You know, it's all these uncomfortable emotions that in the scenarios you've presented, we're trying to take them away and make life a little too easy. Do we want a life that's too easy, or do we want a life that's so colorful, but filled with trauma and triggers and, you know, all the kind of uglier emotions?
So heartbreak and discomfort, you think are essential to what it is to be human?
Yes.
I totally agree with her. And it feels somehow unnatural because we live and someday we'll die. And we all know that emotion will come someday, whether you lose somebody or somebody loses you. And the fact that you will still be able to talk to somebody while that person passed away really doesn't feel natural. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, Nora, you work in the area, in the areas we've been discussing. What do you say to Tiffany's argument?
So, especially because, Tiffany, you work with so many disabled people, I feel like we could help them and take so much of the pain away and try and get them to fit in and to feel more part of everything. But in terms of this whole bringing back the death, I'm so against it, and I don't know how far could we take it. So would my kids grow up with knowing all their grandparents, and then their kids knew all their we would know everyone. It feels so unnatural. You need a bit of imperfection to be able to judge things and know what's right and what's wrong. Because if you never see the wrong, how are you gonna evolve? How are you gonna make the right decisions?
You need a bit of imperfection, you say. We need a bit of imperfection.
I love imperfection.
Het lijkt mij dat het niet helemaal toegestaan is. Want God heeft bepaald dat diegene overlijdt. Je kan niet meer met diegene praten. Diegene kan je niet meer adviseren. It's part of life. Dat is ook de value of life. Het is de waarde van het leven. Als we doodgaan, maar eigenlijk ook weer niet, want je kan nog steeds met me praten. Waar blijft dan die waarde waar we het over hebben? Ik denk dat dat tekort doet aan de waarde van het leven wat we nu hebben.
What I liked in Tiffany's point is the first time it was mentioned that by building more automation, you're removing some of the pain, and the objective is to remove some of the struggle. And then she makes this observation that it's this struggle and this pain that builds part of who we are. Now, to that I respond that I think AI will not be here to remove that pain, it will be here to help you cope with it. I think, in general, I don't see us fight against AI, I see us work with AI.
Imperfection, discomfort, trauma, heartbreak, sweaty palms. It's interesting that we started our discussion about what technology can do, the marvels of technology. And we speculated about how smart machines could be, and we wind up talking about the human importance of things like imperfection and discomfort and awkwardness and sweaty palms, which suggests to me that the debate whether machines can outthink us is really a debate about whether they should. It's not about the technology, it's about us and the competing views we have among ourselves and sometimes within ourselves about whether we would welcome a world given over to the judgments of smart machines. Those decisions are really less about the technology and more about what makes us human.
Ik vind het ook best wel grappig eigenlijk dat we begonnen met een discussie over robots en wat ze voor ons kunnen betekenen, maar ook de gevaren die ze kunnen brengen. En dat eigenlijk in het gesprek we erop uitkomen dat de dingen die misgaan, of de problemen die we op willen lossen, dat dat ook wel dingen zijn die waarde geven aan het leven. En ik ben er daar echt heel erg één van. En dat op zich ben ik ook echt wel een emotioneel wezen. Dat ik wil ook niet dat alle problemen worden opgelost. Alleen ik denk wel dat we onderscheid kunnen maken in welk soort leed een machine ons wel moet kunnen helpen. En in welk soort leed willen we dat niet.
Het is bizar, want je zit met zo'n diverse groep. En ik neem even aan, om ook even uit de hoogte te doen, allemaal intellectuelen. Hè? Iedereen heeft wel kennis over bepaalde zaken. En we komen bij elkaar, we hebben interessante gesprekken. Maar of we dan uitkomen op laten we volledig vertrouwen op die robots, ook al programmeren ze als de beste, Daar zijn we niet op uitgekomen. Omdat we toch dat menselijke, dat gevoel, die imperfectie, we begrijpen dat we dat nodig hebben. En ik denk dat we dat ook nodig hebben om dan te begrijpen wat perfect is.
And if you would like to continue this discussion, please join us online at therightthingtodo.nl. Thank you. Good job.